Numbers game, Ayanda, isn't it? It's all down to how those numbers tally. Very good morning to you in studio and to our viewers as well as we bring you day 4 and our live coverage here from our position at Nasrec for the ANC's elective conference. As usual, Erin Bates is here with me in studio to help us do exactly that, Erin. Crunch those numbers. Cyril Ramaphosa would have felt quite comfortable perhaps going into that conference, perhaps before the release of that Section 89 panel report around Phala Phala. Now that vote counting has gotten underway, one does get a sense that that gap between Cyril Ramaphosa and Zweli Mkhize for the position of president is narrowing.
Absolutely, and just to go through those numbers in terms of the provinces, bear in mind we spoke about this before, not all those delegates expected finally registered. We were up into the 90s in terms of registrations. Only 2 provinces registered all their branch members and voting delegates for the conference, Gauteng with 465 and Mpumalanga with 369. KwaZulu-Natal leads. It has the most delegates, and we heard that about half of the province had done voting yesterday. So that's 876 ANC voting members here. Eastern Cape, 659. Limpopo, 593. Northwest, 305. Western Cape, 258. Free State, 251. And Northern Cape, 241. If you add in the other leagues, like the Youth League, the Women's League, and so on, you get to 4,426 voting delegates here, making the ultimate decision on who's going to be in the top 7 of the ANC.
And I mean, it's those other positions, right, that are feeding into how we answer that question. It's the position of Deputy President, for example, that gives us some sense about how provinces are voting. For one, if we look at the Eastern Cape, rumours around the fact that about a third of the Eastern Cape, this was in the build-up to the elective conference, and these numbers are changing, right?
Yeah,
they're changing all
constantly.
the time. About a third of the province had flipped to Zweli Mkhize. That was the rumour leading up into the province, into the conference. What's the latest now on that province?
So the Eastern Cape, we understood, was likely to back Ramaphosa if they got Oscar Mabuyane in as a deputy president of the country. And this issue of the deputy has become quite a contested one because we know that Lamola is in the mix. We also know that Paul Mashatile is in the mix. And we had Mondli Gungubele speaking on behalf of Ramaphosa's camp saying to delegates yesterday, we're sticking with Mabuyane. So that may well alienate some of the other provinces. I do understand as well, and this is from reporting from our colleagues at the Mail and Guardian, that Lamola has in fact been asked to step down. And I spoke to political analyst Rehofetse Chikane, who was with us yesterday and will join us again today, him saying that it's not necessarily going to cost Lamola that much in terms of his political career in cabinet moving forward. And if he does decide to pull out, as we know that Masina has done for the Treasurer General position, it will add clout and strength to the Mabuyane camp, most likely. But where does that put Paul Mashatile? Quite strong going into this. He's very ambitious. He wants a position in the top 7. He's in the runnings for second in command, and we're going to have to see how all of that plays out when we get to the actual voting numbers once they've not only been gathered and counted, but then also vetted and checked.
Yeah. The voting finishing, I believe, at some point today. Vote counting set to get underway. Perhaps at some point this evening when we'll get some sense of how that vote has unfolded. I want to talk more about provinces and how provinces may have flipped or stuck to their guns as they went to the polls last night. But let's talk about some of the drama that went into the ANC's elective conference and that side show, shall we call it, around former President Jacob Zuma and his private prosecution against Cyril Ramaphosa. We actually heard from the former president yesterday. We did, and let's just have a look at what he said. Quite a different posture, and Michelle, look out for this as we watch the clip in just a moment. But some people sort of saying that it was somewhat out of character for former President Jacob Zuma to do something like barge in to the president's political address, sort of, and disrupt it, and not go with the ANC's usual line of having leaders with clout, with stature, with heritage in the party, doing things to undermine their successes. And in fact, it was in 2017 that Zuma himself said, as outgoing leader of the ANC, whoever emerges from that conference, whether it was Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma or Ramaphosa, we need to give them our backing. So some people quite sort of cynical or sort of doubtful about Zuma making that move on Friday and then into Saturday and asking who put him up to it if it wasn't characteristic of him. Let's have a look at his demeanor yesterday at the conference.
Oh, well, I'm just asking.
You must have heard things.
We've heard it, we've seen it.
This is what was within the...
Which commission? A very quick.
I was saying, no, I'm not an important person.
You are a very
There are
important
important people here. For
Everybody is
information.
important.
As a delegate, you remember?
No, I'm a delegate. I'm under my leaders. From my region, from my province. I'm a very disciplined guy. I listen to my leaders.
Okay, but what I was saying, the very short
They
one.
haven't asked me to talk. They would tell me if they say, now is your time to go and talk to this guy. Then I would have a Monday to talk to you.
Is Mr. Ramaphosa coming back?
Huh?
Is he coming
I
back
don't
as
know.
president?
I absolutely don't know. Nothing.
Very interesting indeed, especially as you say, given his entrance midway through the president's political address that he gave at the start of the conference. Shall we talk about the province that the former President Jacob Zuma is from, and how we reckon KZN is voting or has voted yesterday?
Yes. So 876 members voting from KwaZulu-Natal,
Yep.
the biggest province here at conference. And I heard this, in fact, from an analyst, that KwaZulu-Natal ANC members tend to vote on tribal lines. And so as much as the ANC is a broad church, it has a diversity of members from different cultural orientations, backgrounds, what have you. Likely that the party will simply, in KZN, back Dr. Zweli Mkhize and everybody that is assigned or aligned to him in terms of the remaining now top 7, amongst the remaining top 7 positions. But former President Jacob Zuma does still have sway. You hear him say there, I'm not an important person. Of course he is. He carries a lot of clout. He was far more visible at the beginning of this conference than Dr. Zweli Mkhize was, possibly because Mkhize was busy working behind the scenes, pulling strings, brokering discussions with potential allies, walking into all of this. But important just to say on this litigation, which seems to have kind of died down a little bit as a threat to Ramaphosa's candidacy, I do need to correct something. When we spoke at the sort of bright and early hours of yesterday morning when I was still waking up, I said that the deadline issued by the state attorney on behalf of Ramaphosa was today. In fact, it wasn't, and I corrected that later on. But just to emphasize, it was 5 o'clock yesterday, by which time Ramaphosa expected Zuma to withdraw his purported summons. But then, of course, we had the letter from Zuma saying to Ramaphosa, I want to know by 5 o'clock Sunday if I can have more time to respond to your claims in the state attorney letter. Zuma insistent that summons is effective, not defective, that it is lawful, it's been signed off by a sheriff, and if there's an issue about it being served on the president at his private residence on Friday, well, spokesperson for Zuma's foundation, Mzwanele Manyi, is saying, we'll deliver it to conference. We'll deliver it to him at his official address. But they're driving for that still. So even if Ramaphosa does emerge as winner here at conference, the Zuma Foundation and indeed the former president expecting him in court at the end of January.
You talk about the sway that the former president has in KwaZulu-Natal. It's very interesting that even when he was lobbying for the position of chairperson, he actually didn't get the numbers, not even in his own province.
No, and no raising from the floor either. And so there is a question, as well as, again, we come back to the personality politics of the ANC and indeed South Africa. A lot of scope for attention, but does it bear out in the numbers?
Right.
Similar issue with Lindiwe Sisulu,
Yeah, absolutely. Who didn't get any of the numbers for the Treasurer General.
Yes.
She was, in fact, the only nomination from the floor that didn't pass, right?
Didn't meet threshold whatsoever.
Threshold, yeah. Shall we talk about issues around, one of the big themes, not only for this conference, but for the ANC as a whole, for many, many conferences in the past, has been that of unity and renewal, right? And it's been an up and down relationship within the party and with alliance partners as well.
Yes, and I raised this with Nongeba Mhlauli yesterday from the Youth League, because the ANC has been, and Ramaphosa has really driven this time and again, and it's the theme indeed of this conference, renewal, restoration, reconfiguring the party as it was of old. And the ANC has a lot of sort of investment in its heritage, but some alliance partners are very doubtful about whether that's working. And here's the Secretary General of COSATU speaking on that very point.
We may say we not feel disappointed because it's a process of contestation. Contesting each other is not a crime, but the fact that there is a lot of factional battle that is taking place, you need to ask yourself a question. We're asking ourselves a question as COSATU: is this a contestation based on the unity of the alliance, unity of the ANC, the renewal of the ANC, or unity of the people of South Africa? As you have listened to the report organizational report presented by the Deputy President is sending a message that as the African National Congress we are losing, or they are losing a support on the ground, in particular the supporters also.
So we've also been talking a lot about provinces flipping, Erin. You know, when we give our analysis, and we've had various people coming into the studio helping us understand how the provinces will likely be voting going into conference. We know from the past few days that that could change at any time, and there have been particular provinces that have not only flipped, but there are certain rumors that the vote may not have gone the way we perhaps thought.
Yes, and it's seeing these provinces almost like chameleons, constantly changing their composition, their colors, as it were, in terms of backing Ramaphosa, then changing, or patches of them changing to back Mkhize, I should say. And so this is the very issue, is that will branches stay with their province line, or will they start to break away? We're seeing the likes of Limpopo, a lot of contradictions in terms of different leaders from the PEC level, the spokesperson saying whether they're going to stick with Ramaphosa. You pointed out they were the first province to announce we're backing Ramaphosa for second term. Now some of the PEC members saying no, returning to Mkhize. Similar issues in the northwest, also in Limpopo, and likely there because of the issue of deputy president and possibly losing Lamola as their person, their guy, second in command.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Erin. You know, there's so many moving parts, Ayanda, as we now look forward to vote counting getting underway at some point today. There are still some provinces. There is a province outstanding, Erin, insofar as the vote is concerned.
Many.
There's many provinces outstanding as far as the vote is concerned. So when you ask yourself the question, you know, when will vote counting get underway? When will we actually hear about who emerges victorious from that vote that's taken place last night into the early hours of this morning and will continue this morning? Likely, and our predictions are very fluid at this point, likely perhaps late tonight into the early hours of this morning. However it unfolds, of course, we've got our live position here at Nasrec with our reporters out in those key posts as we continue to bring you live coverage of the ANC's 55th elective conference. For now, it's back to you in studio.